Welcome, guys. Today we are going to be fixing your animals together. Thank you for those of you who are already here, and thank you for those of you who have submitted. I really thoroughly enjoyed looking at all of the submissions that came in and noticing a lot of patterns here. Everybody wants to draw horses. Lots of people submitted foxes, and it was just really interesting to see what everybody struggles with. Welcome in, Jess. Jess, you are in the lineup. Welcome in, Digital Artist, and Dr. Mental. Never seen you around before. Welcome in. Hi, Cult of Hermits. Will we be doing the monthly art challenge submissions? Yes, I will be showing some of those as well. So definitely stick around for that. Today is the last August stream, so I definitely will be doing the submissions. So let's have a look at our submissions now. Today, actually, this is Jess the Oklahoma artist in chat. Welcome in. I saw this piece from beginning to finish, and I saw your updates on the Discord, and it's absolutely beautiful. A very, very perfect rendition of your bear. Like, great action shot. Love the feeling of the water. I think it looks terrific. And I'm so glad that you finished it in time for it to be featured. I think it looks awesome. And I had to crop it a little bit, so a little bit of it is missing, but I had to like really finagle it to not get a moire pattern on this. It's actually really common when you photograph canvases for it to have a moire pattern. Let me show you. You see that pattern that's kind of forming when I make this larger or smaller. So when you are printing something that's painted on canvas, you just have to be careful about the moire pattern. Same thing like if you're wearing a checkered shirt to like a TV interview, right? They'll tell you to wear plain clothing because it's the same type of effect. All right. Nat, not sure if Nat is here or in the chat, but Nat is one of our lovely students, and I just got to say I love your duck drawings. I think they are so cute and really, really well done. I love seeing little studies like this, and it seems because you also submitted this for critique, but I decided to actually show it in the submissions because I don't actually have a lot of feedback for you, because these are, short 3-minute studies, which are really great. And I definitely think that studies like this can help you so much when it comes to learning how to draw really quickly and just, studying how things move, like how to draw the same duck in different positions. So really love what you did here. Love your little notes. And keep these studies coming, because this is really what's going to make your art much better in terms of anatomy and just practice, right? So the more of these you can do, the better. And last but not least, Ray the artist. Not sure if Ray, you are here in the chat. But Ray, I just got to say, I really, really love this piece. I think it's a lot of fun. I love how you included your reference too, because your piece is so much better than the reference. It is a lot of fun. I love the face that you drew on it. I love how you gave it a story. And I think it's really, really well done, like the style and even like the white outline around it, even though it is kind of like a cartoony style. You have some of the foliage or some of the grass overlapping, and it creates really nice contrast. So great job, Ray the artist. Nicely done. All right, so our monthly challenge this month was animal anatomy. And if you want to submit your artwork for the monthly challenge on Discord, you'll have a chance to be featured. You can also submit it on Instagram and just tag us at Wing Canvas. We love to see your submissions and also share your work during our streams. Next month is going to be a new challenge, so keep an eye out for that on the server. Alrighty. So today we're going to be fixing your animals. And if you didn't already know, our mission at Wing Canvas is to make art education easily accessible to everyone. So join us for free live stream lessons on YouTube every week and level up your skills with our community of art nerds. Because we're more than just a YouTube channel, we're an online school of illustration and visual storytelling dedicated to helping artists turn their passion into income. A huge shout out to our amazing students and members for supporting our mission. We love seeing your incredible artwork and watching you grow in our classes and weekly critiques. So if you want to dive deeper, you can join our Discord to access stream notes and demos, exclusive artwork, challenges, and more free resources to help you improve. So come connect with fellow art nerds and get inspired. Okay. So guys, I got so many horses that I feel like I should just show you guys how to draw horses or critique all of the horses first. So we've got Evie here. We've got Mind Flares, who also submitted horses. And let's see, we've got Jessie. So these are 3 horse submissions, and there were more. I just wanted to highlight these 3. And hopefully we can get through all of the horses. Some other submissions that I wanted to show you guys. We also got a lot of foxes. Foxes and horses, definitely super, super popular. So this is by Dandelion. I'll be going over your submission as well. And then a lovely illustrated piece by Zed is Tired. Zed, I hope you're not so tired anymore, but this piece is lovely and I can't wait to give you some feedback. And last but not least, we've got Sam the Elephant. Sam, you submitted 2 pieces. One is just sort of an animal elephant study. Whoops. And then also a cute little character here. So hopefully we will get through all of these today. I don't know. My name says I physically cannot draw horses. Oh, but you can. I promise you can. All right, Evie, thank you for submitting. And you're going to go first. I obviously know which one you want feedback on because your wolf here looks excellent. Really lovely gesture on the horse. It feels like it's attentive and paying attention. Really nice use of line work here. This drawing feels pretty effortless. So I think this one is really, really, really well done. So I'm just going to put a little check mark here, like a teacher would. Now let's look at your horse here. So I'm interested in knowing, Evie, if you're in the chat, if you used reference for this. So let me know if you use reference or not, because in a lot of these submissions, references were not included. So that's totally fine. I can try to find something similar if I need to. But basically with this horse, the only thing I would say right now is immediately is the head is a little too big. So you can find basically any photo online of a horse. So I'm just going to grab one here. This one's super big, but let's just grab a reference. Okay. So just like we measure humans in heads, we also can measure animals in heads. So a lot of you submitted stuff and kind of said, oh, I'm afraid to use references. I'm not comfortable using references, or I tried to draw this without a reference. So I definitely think that you should look at references for things like proportions, right? Like you don't have to use references for things like you don't have to copy a reference necessarily, but when you are using references, you want to use them to gauge proportions. Proportions is a good one. Also pose. So what type of pose you would like. And then like these are a couple things that I would use references for. At least for these things, I would use photos, right? Things like anatomy. So photos are always the best references because if you use illustrations can be exaggerated, right? So I would only use illustrations or illustrations/animations, I would use the references only for things like style and, like movement breakdowns and things like color theory. Okay, so I definitely use, I would suggest using mostly photo references. So if you look at the horse, I feel like the one thing I can do is just adjust the size of the head on the horse. So it should be much bigger. I'm just going to adjust it so it's like a little bit bigger here. That also made it a little blurry, unfortunately, but I think mostly it was just the head was a little bit small. And then if you look at the anatomy of a horse, the horse has this bump here that is sort of like right along this circle. So let's be sure to put that in. I'm just going to merge all of these. Okay. So there's a bump. And then there's also, like, if you look at the horse's, why is this? Oh. If you look at the triangles, right? On the horse, there's actually a lot of triangles. So there's a triangle for the head, and then there's like a triangle shape for the neck, right? So, and then there's like triangles for the ears. There's sort of a lot of triangles going on. And then sometimes sometimes like I see people draw horse heads as two circles like this, and then connecting it together, right? I also see a circle and a square, or like a cube, right? So if you want to go for a more complex form, you can do something like this. And both of those work. So it looks like you have the circle and you have the cube, the square, but it feels like the ears and the eyes are a little bit off, mostly because I feel like the eyes are a little bit high on the horse. So you can definitely move that eye down a little bit more. So let's move this down. And we'll move the eye down. Jess, I see your comment about the reference. Sure, if you want to send over the reference that you used, I'd be happy to take a look. I actually found some references that were similar in pose, but I didn't find the exact one that you were using. Okay, so I'd make the eyes a little bit smaller. And then the ears, I feel like the ears are not in the right place. It almost looks like a horn, like this almost looks like a horn rather than ears. So when you're drawing the ears on a horse, they're actually like right on the top of the head. So this ear would be a little bit further back like this. And if you did want to include the other ear, you could. It would just be kind of over here. Right. And if you're drawing, if you want to draw like a pretty horse, right, then it's kind of like if you're trying to make somebody pretty, right, you would give them more hair or more volume on the head, right? So if you want to make this horse feel really pretty, like with the mane, then I would actually make it a little bit larger than the head here. And then remember, whatever you do to make the neck a little bit taller, you'd probably have to do the same thing with the body. So I'm just kind of making it a little bit more proportionate. But yeah, a lot of you guys wanted horses, so it seems like horses are a pretty popular topic. So definitely wanted to cover those first. The other thing I like reference for is because it gives you a lot of very subtle cues. For example, if I was thinking about how to draw a horse, I definitely wouldn't put in these bumps. Like I wouldn't really remember the anatomy here, right? So I definitely think that you could put in some of these bumps, like here, and then this one going underneath. But yeah, I definitely think like just a small adjustment of the proportions and making the mane a little bit fluffier. Like these are some small things that can improve the piece. So not sure if Evie, if you're here. Also, like these lines that you drew are not really realistic to how the mane works, right? Because the mane, like if this is the neck of the horse, the mane kind of grows this way, right? It grows on top of the neck. So These lines here don't make a lot of sense, because it actually is like mimicking human hair. So I'm just gonna erase this. Like, I think it's okay to mimic a little bit of human hair, but to have it that long can look a little bit silly. So what you can do is you can just kind of like figure out how much of it you want to show, and then sort of go along this line here and just work your way up. Right? And then have some stragglers. All right. How do you make this how do you make this horse look more tri-dimensional? Paco Bar, I think you mean three-dimensional? Three-dimensional, right? Like make it look more, less flat. So I definitely think you could do that with, some good placement of the like what's in the foreground and what's in the background. But I think that this person wanted just like a simpler style, right? And so I think like there are a couple of things you could do to showcase the anatomy, but like I think what you're already doing, for example, putting this leg behind, putting this leg in front, and putting this in the middle, that's already doing a lot for that three-dimensional look. However, if you wanted to add shading, right, there's always things you can do for that, but you would need to figure out what the lighting's doing as well. So I'm not going to get into shading so much with this one, because I don't think that was the intent of this piece, and there are definitely more opportunities to show shading. But basically you could apply some very simple shading in the same style, like in the same way, by adding some to the belly, right? So I'm just gonna pretend that your lighting is relatively even, right? Let's say it's like hitting the horse kind of from the top, right? Top down. So you can add a little bit of shading underneath the belly and under the neck a little bit. Usually there's some shading under the neck. And then you could kind of follow some of the, the anatomy of the horse as well. But typically speaking, I would leave it simpler rather than, go in with a lot of rendering. Like you could, add a little bit of shading to the leg, especially near the bottom where it's like a little bit darker. It's generally receiving less light. And then you could put a little bit, here and follow the anatomy. So definitely there are opportunities to shade. I just don't know how much of it you actually need. In this case, there's really a simple style, right? All right. Okay. Oh yeah, and then definitely the face can also have a little bit of shading if you want. Again, this is totally up to you and your style or your level of finish. Okay, so whenever you're drawing anything that has fur, like I really like the tufts of fur on the hooves. I think that the tail could also feel a little bit more, just a little bit fluffier, you know, so you could kind of like break up this line a little bit. I would remove some of these lines that don't really connect as hair. And then, you know, you can like follow this line, but generally make it a little bit fluffier. Shield, your your dog must really like horses as well. All right. Okay, cool. So we're going to move on from this. Hopefully, Evie, this helps. And hopefully you'll have a chance to redraw this horse and apply some light shading to it just to see if you can have another go at it. Okay. Next up is mind flares. Okay, so mind flares, you were drawing this horse without reference. So if you're drawing horses without reference, you did an amazing job. Like, it is very, very good. Considering you didn't use any reference. So, wow. Like, you did really, really good. The horse that you used reference for, let me just find a similar reference, because horses have different personalities. They all can look a little bit different. But generally speaking, I think you captured the head anatomy really well. I was going to say that you might have to be careful when it comes to drawing things out of your head, because the proportions can look strange, right? So like, for example, this horse kind of looks like a moose. Do you guys know what moose look like? For those of you from the north, a moose has like a really big nose. So it kind of looks like this. Just a second. Let me just grab a, yeah. So there are lots of animals that have similar skulls as horses do. You know, lots of creatures that kind of look like horses or have a similar look. So this is what a moose looks like. If you haven't seen one before, they look kind of like horses, but their noses are much bigger, right? So sometimes when you get the proportions wrong, it can look like a different animal. And horses look like, moose look like horses, but with like huge noses, antlers, and a bit of a hunchback. So, you just have to be careful, and like, don't be afraid to don't be afraid to use references. References are your friend. References are, I was just saying this to my class, references help you build up your visual library, right? So you definitely shouldn't be scared ever of using references, because, you know, you're learning as you go and you're only getting better. If you do want to challenge and draw things out of your head, absolutely. But if you're studying, I think using references is really a good thing. Okay, so the first thing I would do with the horse is I would probably make the ears just slightly bigger. I think the way you drew the eyes is really good. I think that, let me just zoom in here. So I'm only going to redraw the one that you did with reference, because I think you know what's wrong with the other ones, right? The ears are generally too small. You forgot about the mane. In both of these, I think you forgot that the horses have hair and where the hair is placed, which kind of made it look like it was missing something, right? Some people have a much better visual library and like mental memory of things. Like some people are just better at drawing things out of your head. And that's great for you, because I am not very good at drawing things out of my head. I'm great if I can draw, like, you know, if I study something for a long time. For example, people. I can draw people out of my head. Why? Because I did too much figure drawing. I did a lot of figure drawing. And then, you know, if I did as many figure drawings with horses that I did with people, I would probably be able to draw horses out of my head. So it really depends on how practiced you are, really. So again, I would say the same thing about the mane. You know, if you want to give your horse some personality, you can give it sort of a cute little hairdo. And just remember that the mane is a really important part of the horse. Your notes here, what could be improved? So I think in general, the eyes could feel a little bit more dimensional. Let me just zoom in here. Right now, you kind of have the eyes drawn like this. It's kind of like a triangle shape, right? Kind of like this shape, and then it's kind of round at the bottom, and then you have this shape here at the top. But actually, to make it feel more round, I would probably, let me just draw this with black. I would probably bend this a little bit more. And then the part that goes on top has to be a little bigger and kind of wrap around the eye like that. Just like in human eyes, right? It wraps around it. So you can still give the horse lots of emotion and detail in the eye, but instead of it being flat, right, you want it to be more round. You want it to wrap around the eyeball. So that's probably one thing I would fix. Also with the horse's head, I think you did a great job with the shading. It follows the anatomy well. I think, though, I would probably remove this part of the shading because it looks a little strange. Like this type of relationship looks a little strange. Typically speaking, I would probably not add anything that's going to confuse the viewer, right? So I'm just going to erase that. And then this line as well, this line appears to be broken, which is kind of weird. So I would remove this line. And then bring that in like this. Like actually connect it. The nostrils. The nostrils are generally the darkest part of the horse, so you probably want to make that part the darkest. I'm just going to check in with the chat here. Eduardo says, hi, any tips on drawing animals on site? I'm trying to remember the anatomy of the animal I see and try to draw a cat, for example. When you're saying on site, if you mean by observation, absolutely. Like if you have a pet, it's a great idea to draw it, or a dog, right? Or any kind of pet bird, right? Drawing things from life is super, super helpful. And I think that you should seize any opportunity you have to draw from life, whether it's at the zoo or from your own pets. For the horse, in this case, I would emphasize the pointiness of the nostrils. And then kind of like a gentle fade down at the bottom. You always want to put in your darkest darks, because that's going to help you map out the other areas. So yeah, I think you were pretty close with this horse. Really, the only things I would say are to make sure that there isn't anything that's confusing the anatomy on the face. Try to make the eyes rounder so they actually wrap around the animal. And then emphasize your darks, right? Like what are the darkest parts of your animal, and go ahead and make those really, really dark. Get ample contrast if you can. And Eduardo, I would definitely, if you only have like a few minutes to work on your animals, starting off with like a gesture and simple shapes, like just focusing on the silhouette is going to help you a lot. Okay, hopefully Mind Flares, thank you for submitting. Hopefully this is helpful. You should always use a reference if you can't picture things well. It seems like you have the ability to picture things nicely out of your head, but you just need a reminder sometimes, right? But yeah, well done, and thank you for submitting. All right, let's see. There was one more horse here, Jesse. All right, Jesse. This horse is super solid. I think you did a really nice job with it. Love the style of it. And yeah, I know you did this for Art Fight. And if you do have a link to a reference, or the reference you used, I'm curious, did you make it up or did you use a reference for the pose? Yeah, it's definitely an amazing horse. Shield forwarded the reference to you to me on Discord. Okay, let me take a look. My Discord. Thanks, Shield. Ah, got it. Okay. Okay, so I think that it's pretty close to the reference that you chose. I was gonna say that usually this leg here is bent more. Hold on, where are you? So I was gonna say that usually this leg of the horse would be bent like a little bit more. It's currently very straight. So it kind of looks like it looks a little funny because it looks like this foot is in front of this foot, and it's like standing like a person almost. Sometimes our references can lie to us a little bit because like horses are very heavy. Okay, horses are not meant to be standing on both legs. Jess, you probably know a lot more about horses than I do. But yeah, I definitely think that this one you did an amazing job with. It has a good personality. It's like looking up. It has a nice style. It has beautiful texture. So really, I don't have a ton of feedback for you. I would just say I would probably do the shadows a little bit differently. Because right now, if I zoom in here, hold on. If I zoom in here, some of your shadows are done with cross hatching, right? It's kind of done this way, which is fine, but the rest of your horse isn't cross hatched, nor is the background or any other elements like that. So it almost looks like you colored in a sketch, right? Yeah, this is our last horse. It's not all horses. What I would do here is I would really simplify the sketch and maybe consider outlines that aren't all black. For example, I think removing the lines will make the piece a little stronger because, first of all, the lines are flattening out the form. If you're gonna crosshatch, then you kind of need to follow the form. Do you know what I mean? Like if you're gonna crosshatch, you would really need to know like which way the muscles are going. So if you're crosshatching, you would be hatching this way. Find a black. Like, you know, following the form would make more sense. But then if you have to curve the lines, then it starts to look like hair, right? So in this case, I would just keep it very, very flat. And just get rid of the hatching. Get rid of the hatching, get rid of the outlines of the shadows as well. So I would completely remove the hatching. And instead you can kind of continue, you know, like for example, if underneath the horse is a little bit darker, right, then you can kind of go in and just mimic the rest of the shading that you have. Because it's about consistency, right? Like right now your horse shading looks a little bit inconsistent and your shadow is kind of cutting everything off. So I would simplify your shadows. Right? Make it feel as if it's part of the horse. There's a nice core shadow here on the horse because there's a bit of a reflection on the belly, so you can kind of go in and make it a little darker along here. And then you could probably sneak in, if you're going to render the horse to have some bounce light, then you could kind of sneak in a little bit of green. So I'm just selecting this. I'm going to shift it towards green. Like maybe it doesn't even need that much, but then you can add a little bit of bounce light from the grass. And you can kind of add it down here as well in some of the shadows so they don't look super dark, but they look like they're kind of merging in with the environment. Right, so a little bit of bounce light can really help it feel more like it's in the environment. And then anything that's like super soft, right? Like the tail, the mane, you want to try and keep those edges nice and blurry. So a good variety of hard and soft edges is really going to help your piece feel a bit more realistic, which is what I think you're going for here. Going for realism, right? Yeah, submissions are closed. We sent a few reminders on the Discord, and I was impressed that out of all the submissions we got, we only got 2 people who submitted and did not make their folders shareable or viewable. So unfortunately, if you submit and I can't see your file, then you're not going to get selected. So there were 2 of you who submitted artwork that I couldn't open. But it's a big improvement because I sure know that Jesse has lectured you guys for not sharing, not making your folders visible, and it's gotten better. But there are always still some people who forget. I think with the horse itself, like I added a little bit of negative space. I added some, just getting rid of some of those hard outlines. I think that'll really help improve the texture of the horse. So I'm just going to show you kind of what I did here, the before and after. And then I would do the same thing with this mane. I would just like make it less crunchy, make it softer. Yeah. You could also experiment with lines too, right? You can experiment with like removing some lines and then seeing how that looks, because there's kind of a heavy line around the entire horse, which isn't bad. It just can make it look a little bit more cartoony. So I definitely suggest that you try even like changing the color of your outlines can help. But yeah, I'm just kind of softening up the mane here. Jess, you're going for semi-realistic. I definitely think you accomplished that. Again, like I love the expression on the horse too. I love how you can see some of the whites of its eyes, and it just feels like it's like, you know, it knows something, right? It has a very knowing look, which is very nice. You can put some of the mane as well in the front, right? Just to kind of keep it feeling windy. Like there's usually some of that in the front. Yeah, but overall, I think you did an awesome job. I'm not going to go into the background because I don't really think it needs it. However, if you do have the background on a separate layer, and you have the sky and the field separated, just one comment on the background that I think could make a big difference is, typically speaking, when you're drawing a sky, the sky line, in most cases, it's a little bit lighter on the bottom and darker on the top. And I think for your piece, you could create a lot more separation by doing that. So I'm just kind of selecting your blue here, making it a little bit lighter, and then just kind of taking an airbrush I'm just kind of like lightening up the blue just like around the bottom edge. This will brighten up your background, and it'll also create some separation between the ground and the sky. And usually if you look up at skies, they're lighter at the bottom and darker at the top. So hopefully that brings a little bit more contrast down below. Okay. Hopefully that was helpful, Jess. And that you'll come back to it. Okay, so now let's move on from something other than horses, because we've done a lot of horses. All right. Also, if you're on the Discord, I will send you these files so that you can have them afterwards. Okay, hold on. Before we get into foxes, Sam the elephant. I wanted to do Sam the elephant first. Elephants are incredible animals, and if you've ever observed an elephant before, it can do everything with its tusks, like everything with its trunk that we can do with our arms, and more, because it can use it as like a hose, which is amazing. So the first thing I'm gonna do is, again, I'm just gonna pull up some references of elephants. Let's just look at elephants. I'm just gonna take a look at elephants here, and just observe and take in the animal and all of its majestic, variations on this animal. So there's African elephants and there are Asian elephants, right? African elephants tend to be a little bit bigger. Their ears are bigger. Their tusks are bigger. Their faces are a little wider. If I go to elephant African versus Asian, we can kind of look at some of the differences. So you want to actually know like what kind of elephant you want to capture, so you can like really see the difference in the size of the ears, right? I think finding references and really like looking at the differences and studying the proportions between different types of elephants can be really helpful when you're doing anatomical studies or when you're trying to create a character. So first of all, like if you look at this African elephant, you can kind of see that the ear almost looks like it almost looks like Africa, right? Like the shape of Africa. It's very big. It's roughly the size of the face, right? Whereas if you look at the Indian elephants or the Asian elephants, right, their ears are much smaller. I would say you can probably fit at least 2 to 3 ears in the head of the elephant. Whereas the African elephants, it's like if you look at the elephant head from the side, it's about the same size as the ear, right? Now, if you look at the backs of the elephant, the African elephants have this kind of bump. It almost looks like a cow. You know how like cows and a lot of horses, a lot of animals have this bump in the pelvis, and it's a lot more visible in the African elephant than in the Asian elephant. In the Asian elephant, the backs tend to be a bit more curved, almost like hunched a bit, like much more rounded, whereas the African elephants tend to have this arc in their back. So these are all of the subtle differences that I never knew elephants had until I actually sat down to observe them, right? So observation is crucial in this exercise if you really want to get good at drawing animals. And then you can also look at the location of the tusks, right? The size of the tusks, as well as how long the nose or the trunk of the elephant is. So if I look at all of these elephants, their trunk length can touch the floor if it's unfurled, right? It can touch the floor. So it's generally the length of its limb. And I would say about half the girth of it, right? So half the volume. And it's very, very flexible. It can kind of curve, and it naturally hangs in this S curve. Okay, so now that we've observed elephants, let's have a look at how we can apply the elephant. I'm just going to move this off my screen. Now we can look at how we can apply it. All right. So, Sam the elephant. I can really appreciate how you're trying different poses, you're trying different styles, and you're also trying out, elephant-inspired characters like this one, which I think is really cool. It's almost like kind of reminds me of a Smurf, like an elephant Smurf. So the first thing I would suggest here is, I know you've drawn elephants a lot. I've kind of seen you submit some of these before, but I thought that it would be really helpful to discuss what some of the common things that I see when people do try to draw elephants. And one of them is consistency. So consistency when you are drawing characters. That means that if these 4 elephants are supposed to be the same species or the same character, right, that there should be some level of consistency in the trunks as well as the eyes and everything else. Okay, so it looks like here that you are drawing an African elephant, just based on the size of the ear. So for example, if we start with this one, let's start with this one here. The elephant's eyes are too high up, so they generally would be like somewhere around here. Okay, and then with elephants, they have tiny eyes, like teeny tiny eyes, because their heads are so big. So if you don't actually draw the, like, you don't actually have to draw the eyes, even just like a little, like a little curve can help with the expression, right? You don't necessarily need to draw in like a big eye with all this expression if you don't need to. It can be really cute with just like a line. So yeah, you want to move the eyes down just like humans, right? Human heads, our skulls, like let's say in a human skull, right? Our noses will align with our eye sockets, right? So if this is a human skull, right? If I was to draw eyes inside it, right? The eyes kind of sit inside the skull like this. And then if I was to draw the eyebrows, it would kind of overlap a little bit like this. Right? And then the nose will visually align with the eyes. Right? So there's a relationship between the eyes and the nose. And the same thing with an elephant. So let's have a look at an elephant's skull. I'm trying to find a good picture here of an elephant skull. Some of these are looking really weird. I just want to find one that's like not so strange looking. Okay, here we go. Okay, so if you look at the elephant's skull, you'll notice that the eye socket it's almost like it connects with the it's like over here, right? It's over here. So it doesn't really have its own socket. It kind of connects to the side of the skull. So it's actually quite small. However, the relationship between the eyes and the nose is the same, very, very similar to humans. And, you know, this is obviously the nasal cavity. So the nose technically starts pretty high, right? Starts up here, and then it like follows this, and it goes down right beneath that. But if you look at the relationship between the nose and the eyes, right, it's on a bit of a curve like this. So if you study the skull, then you'll realize that the eyes have to relate to the nose somehow, and note how they relate, right? So if you're trying to turn your character into more of like an anthropomorphic character, right, as in the bottom, you can kind of put in, like, the eyes would have to be down here for that to make sense, right? Because the opening or the nasal cavity is actually above the eye sockets, not below the eye sockets. So the eyes, if you wanted to make them bigger, right, they would have to kind of be down here, because the nose should be higher than the eye. And then it looks a little bit more believable. And then the tusks, I don't know if these elephants don't have tusks, so I'm going to leave it out. But if you are designing an elephant character, I think tusks would be actually pretty interesting to study. So elephants have interesting faces from the front. I don't know if you have actually studied elephants from the front, but their faces aren't very round. Elephants from the front kind of have this shape. It's like a hexagon shape at the front. So that's like the top of the skull. And then their trunk kind of connects up here. And then they have a very long trunk. So let's say the trunk is like down here. Right? And then they have this sort of other hexagon shape that's behind it. And then the tusks are here. So the eyes of the elephant are actually here, right? On like a real African elephant. That's kind of like the shape of the front of the elephant. Right? So if you can exaggerate that however you want, but if you wanted the face to be rounder, you can still, put in some of this information, but in a rounder type of style. So, for example, modifying the shape of the head. So kind of coming out like this, bringing this in, and then maybe making this a little bit rounder. But like this part is something that you wouldn't really notice unless you observed it. Same thing with this elephant here. Like I'd bring the the eyes down here. Right? And then the nose or the trunk. You would want the trunk to be like a little bit thicker as well. Right? Again, back to that consistency. It just seemed a little bit too thick in some areas and too thin in other areas. So I think that consistency is really going to help. Ramon, thank you for your support in becoming a Wing Canvas Angel. Hopefully we'll see you on the members Discord. That'll be really fun. Come say hello, but thank you for joining. All right. So to get some form of consistency, you want to just make sure that all of the shapes of the elephant and the elephant's like skeletal structure is, you know, similar in all of the angles. So for example, for the side of the elephant, you know, you can make the eyes bigger, but generally speaking, the eyes are very, very small on elephants. If you make them too big, then they start to look like baby elephants, right? Which is fine. But also the key is just consistency. So here, the ears would probably go down lower like this. And then this ear would kind of come down off to the side. And then for the trunk, it's a really good opportunity to, you know, draw in the wrinkles of the trunk, because here it's showing me that the cylinder is going in this direction, and then here it's kind of turning, right? It's turning, and then over here it's, you can kind of see it turning this way, right? And then over here you see it turning this way. So your eye is going to follow these curves, right? And those curves tell you the direction in which the trunk is changing, right? It's changing directions. So I think adding these lines, instead of just kind of like adding them, you know, like this, like straight lines like this, you want to curve them as much as possible. So if you have a line that looks like that, like if I can see this triangle here, that means that the lines will follow that triangle, right? And eventually curve up this way. So again, putting the eyes a lot lower, making sure the nose is overlapping the eye. And here, because it's very foreshortened, right, it works. But in this case, what I would do is make it scrunchy. Like, right? You want the nose to look like it's scrunched, or if you want it to look like it's being extended, right? If it's extended, you can kind of make it like thinner, right? Where it's like being extended and it's like reaching a little bit, right? So this type of compression here tells me that it's extended. If you want it to be more foreshortened, then, you know, you can have some of it scrunched up. Like, think about how an animator would animate an elephant's trunk, right? to kind of express the movement of it all. I think that's when I would use animation as a reference, because I find that it's super, super helpful to kind of see how animators simplify stuff. So if you're having trouble simplifying things, then I would look to animation for sure. Just a really, really good way of studying stuff that has already been done better and more exaggerated. A lot of you guys also submitted like hybrid animals, and I like a lot of the stuff that's like very open to interpretation. I'm actually not going to fix it because, you know, they're your characters. So I'm more interested in fixing your anatomy of things that are, you know, inspired by real animals, because otherwise it can be quite subjective, right? Especially if your character is like a mishmash of like 7 different animals, then I can't really comment on that very easily, right? Okay. So here I'm really just kind of helping you fix the faces and keep some level of consistency. For this one, I really like the cuteness of the nose, so I'm gonna keep it. But if you look at the tip of elephant noses, they have like almost like a finger, like they have like a little finger that can be used to grab stuff. So the elephant's trunk actually is kind of shaped like this at the end. Right? It's kind of shaped like that, almost like it's got like a little sucker or like a little Lego hand, I guess. So this is where you can start to draw in some of those lines. And, you know, if you want to echo or reference the anatomy, right, it's really this shape. It's that hexagon shape at the front of the elephant that's really going to make that going to help you get that likeness. But you may not want to go too bony, right? Like you may want an elephant that's kind of fluffy and not fluffy, but an elephant that's kind of cuter and not as bony. So in that case, you can remove it. Now I'm going to comment on your character because I actually really like your character. Before we do that, though, let's talk about the elephant's body. Because elephants are really, really heavy animals, and they carry a ton of weight. So their legs have to be really, really strong. Here, your legs are drawn as though the elephant's kind of floating, right? Like almost like a balloon elephant. It doesn't feel like it has any of the weight that it needs to have, right? Because they have big bellies and such. So let's put in more of that weight. So first of all, I'm going to make the belly a bit bigger. The belly is probably going to come in here. And then for the legs, right? Think about what your legs do when they're holding weight. When they're holding weight, your legs have to bend a little bit, right? If they're not bending, if they're like, if you're standing and you shift your weight from one leg to the other, chances are the leg that's shifting or your weight is gonna be more comfortable on a leg that's slightly bent, right? Try standing on one leg for a second. If you stand on one leg, it's gonna be a lot harder, right, to stand on a leg that's straight, completely straight, than standing on a leg that has a slight bend to it. So you always want to think about that when you're drawing legs on any type of creature. They would have like which direction it's bending, right? That's really, really important. So all I did was I just added a little bit of a bend, and I added some more corners essentially to your legs, right? So this one here would be going backwards. Let's see if this one is forward. Also, like, usually speaking, like if this leg is in front and this leg is behind, then the back legs would do the same thing. So the back legs would also be, they would also echo each other. So the back legs here would be, let me see, it would be going back into space. So it would be going like this. And then this one would be coming forward. Right. Okay. Just catching up with the chat. Hey, Big Snake Boss. Welcome in, one of our lovely students. The leg bones, when folded, appear more with elephants as well. Asking because their legs are gigantic. Yeah, definitely. Like, it depends, because yes, you should keep that round silhouette, and like it generally depends on how cartoony you want to go with the elephant, right? So if you want to be more cartoony, then it's fine to keep them nice and round. It's always better to simplify than it is to complicate things, right? Always better to simplify. However, the anatomy, like even if you look at animators, right, they have studied anatomy and they know what elephant legs do. Like they've studied it long enough to actually know what they look like. So in that case, it's easier to simplify if you're studying how they're made or how their anatomy works. Okay, so Sam the Elephant, for your OC, for this character, I actually like the hair. I kind of like how the ears are blue. The eyes are okay. I think they're a little bit misplaced. So, but again, like it's an OC, and I'm not going to go too much into detail about what you should change, because obviously this is your character, but I do think it should follow the anatomy, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is just fix your trunk. Just make your trunk a little bit thicker. And I'd also probably bring this down more. Right, like bring that down. And just make your trunk a little bit more consistent. And then the tusks. The tusks are kind of misaligned. They're a little high as well. So I'd probably bring them lower. They should be around this area here. Okay, so we can keep them small. Just bring this one down. And this one would also be like roughly here. So I'm just gonna paint over this. Pretend that it wasn't here. We'll pretend this one wasn't here either. Okay. Now, I think what you could do is either extend the trunk, like if you want to keep your eyes big, I think it's fine, but let's move them down just a little bit so they don't look so high up. Let's move them down. Okay, so I'm going to move them down, and then I'm also going to move the nose so that it's in between. Okay. So like I said, the nose is really, it starts much higher. So if you want to really follow the anatomy of the elephant, then the nose kind of has to appear here, right? And almost like block the eyes a little bit. Right? It would kind of look like this. So I didn't do too many changes. I just kind of made the nose structurally overlap the eye a bit more, so it looks more elephant-like. So let's merge these layers. So that was the before, and this is the after. All right. Hopefully that, makes a bit more sense. Really, I didn't tweak that much. I just ended up like making very, very small adjustments because I think your character is great as is. I think it can just kind of follow the anatomy a little bit more. But generally speaking, I think the hair and even like the fluffy part below is super cute. And I think you can keep going with it. I'm just gonna add some shines to the eye. I did notice though, I've seen some elephants that have eyelashes. Have you seen how long eyelashes are on elephants? Like they have tiny eyes, but they've got long lashes. So it might be fun to give your character some long lashes, because trust me, I don't know why elephants have long eyelashes, but the last time I saw one up close, I was very jealous. It's like, why do elephants have long eyelashes? Like, they don't need them. Anyway, just thought they were fun. Yeah, they have eyelashes and they're super long. I don't know if I can find a reference picture. Let me see if I can find a picture of one. Here, I found one. at this. Look at this. Long eyelashes and lots of wrinkles around the eyes. Some of these are almost like human-like, superhuman-like. Here's another one. You see how long their eyelashes are. This one's wearing some blue mascara. Super stylish. Yeah, look at that. I don't know why. I just remembered that they have very long eyelashes. And like not all of them do. But the one that I saw was like very obvious. Okay. Anyway, super cute character. Really love what you're doing. And, you know, if you love elephants, keep drawing them. The more you draw them, the better you're going to get. So, Sam the Elephant, thank you for submitting. Hopefully that has been helpful. Again, here's the before and after. Okie dokie. Now, last but not least, we are going to look at some foxes and how we can improve at drawing foxes. Foxes are another one of those critters that is super popular. Everybody wants to draw foxes. We had a lot of fox submissions. Kevin says they need them to have crazy flies out there. Yeah, I know, right? And they have to block that fierce African sun, right? Or Indian sun, for that matter. Yeah, keep the sun and dust out of their eyes. Exactly. So these are the small details that we don't really realize until we really observe animals, right? Cool. Okay, foxes. Let's look at some foxes. So foxes, again, are one of those creatures that are really popular, not seen very often. But what I like is that this person, Dandelion, who submitted, I really like how you're experimenting with different poses, and I can see your process work. I can see that you're drawing, you know, you're drawing like the circle and then the larger circle and then connecting it and then drawing, you know, a circle for the body. Like this is definitely correct. This type of structure drawing is really good. So you're constructing, right? Constructing animals is the best way to actually draw them, because then you can just move the circles, right? So if they're facing you, you can just kind of like move the circles, and you can then draw them in any which way, right? So here are the hands. Like let's say here's the back leg. Right? And then you can kind of draw in the tail. However you want to construct it, you can just move the circles. And so I think that's a really, really good way to start. What I would change though, hold on a sec. So don't outline. You're not outlining, you're constructing. So that's the good thing. The one thing I don't see is I don't see you constructing the head or the snout of the fox. Okay, because foxes and cats and dogs and most mammals on four legs have a snout. Most of them do. Cows, horses, you know, most of them do. So if you wanted to start off with a circle for the head, that's fine. However, foxes tend to have a slightly different head shape. Just a minute here. I'm just going to make the canvas size a little bigger. Because I don't like it when my lines are pixelated. trying to keep this file size kind of small so that it doesn't lag on me. Okay, so foxes tend to have heads that are a little bit more of a hexagon shape, like this. So if I had to simplify the head of a fox, I would simplify it as if it's a hexagon shape, but not a perfect hexagon. It's kind of larger at the top, right? Larger at the top, smaller at the bottom. Okay, so you can adjust it however you want, right? So you could adjust it like this. So if your fox has a wider head or a more narrow head, you can kind of adjust it, right? You can adjust it to this shape. You can make it a little bit more flat, right? Maybe this fox is a little bit more sinister. But basically, you can modify this shape depending on the character of the fox. Now, foxes also have ears that can go from pointy to more rounded. And generally speaking, the ears tend to go like this. They kind of start at the corners of this hexagon and then they move out, right, outwards like this. And then I typically just draw a little bit of fur in the ears just to kind of show the way the fur grows. And then if you notice on cats and other cat-like creatures, there's like a secondary fold in the ear that kind of looks like this, and sometimes it has fur on it as well. So I think the way you drew the body is actually pretty good. I just wanted to show you how to construct the face a little bit better. Because right now you kind of have the face as if you're drawing a human, right? You're like, okay, here's the face, here's the center line, and then here's the eyes, and then the nose. I'm gonna draw like a human nose. And then I'm going to draw like a cute mouth like this. And although that's cute and all, it doesn't actually follow the structure of a fox. So think about whenever you're drawing like a cat or a dog, right? There's going to be the snout of the fox. And the snout of the fox, you can kind of think of it like, so from the side, it's like a cup, right? Looks like this, right? And that attaches to the hexagon shape. However, foxes tend to have snouts that are a little bit more dainty. So, you know, again, you can take this cup shape and just like the hexagon shape, you can modify it. So let's say we modify it and we make the front a little bit more square, right? Like kind of more square. And then we make the back of the cup more round. Then you would have this type of shape, right? Again, it's that complex shape. And then this you could also attach to here, and it would make a completely different fox, different style of fox. You could also make it more cone-like, right? You can have like a little bit of a curve. Maybe it curves up a little bit. Maybe it has, you know, more of a corner, more of a bend. Again, these are all things that you can, like slight changes that you can make to make your character feel a certain way. So you can definitely start off with the fox's nose. Like if you wanted to put in the nose, right? You can put in that nose. And then you can even put in like the bottom of the snout here, right? Like let's say you do this and then you put in some whiskers. It still needs to follow that form. So it kind of starts in between the eyes, right? And then if you put in the eyes of the animal, right? That snout starts in between the eyes. Just like that. Just like on humans. On humans, the nose, like it wouldn't go all the way up here. It would, the bridge of the nose would like kind of turn into the eyebrow, right? On a human face. So it's the same thing with foxes and animals. The eyebrows and eyes and nose, they all have to kind of make sense. They all have to connect to each other. Okay, that's a weird mouth on a human. Ignore that. I was just kind of following your lead here. But yeah, I can see that like these are just like rough sketches. But whenever you draw eyes like this, like if you look at this fox right now, you're drawing the eyes kind of human-like. So like this, right? Now, there are not a lot of animals that have eyes where you actually see this much of the eye white. Even our closest animal cousins, let's say the great apes, okay? Even the apes, you can see a little bit of the white of their eyes, but their eyes tend to still look more animal-like. And animal eyes tend to be a lot shorter, right, than human eyes. And you don't see a lot of the white of the eyes. So in all the animals we drew, horses, elephants, foxes, their eyes will not show the white or as much of the white as you see here, right? So you will see some of the iris, like I could erase this and make some of this into the iris, but very, very rarely would you see the white around the eyes. If you want to give your animal some character, sure, go ahead and add some white. But if you give it human eyes, it's going to look really weird, like super weird. So, I mean, you could do some things where you study, like if I study foxes, like fox characters, whether they're like Zootopia or whether it's like from the old Robin Hood movie. I remember there was a fox in that movie as well. If you study some cartoon foxes, right, you can see that they may have eyes that feel more human-like. For example, this character, right? You can see that they've basically taken human eyes and human eyebrows and added it to the fox's face, gave it some fur, but the snout is still there and the relationship between the eyes and the nose is also there, right? So I think you need to think about snouts a little bit more, and the easiest way to draw a snout, and I'm going to just draw over this drawing so that you can see, basically the snout of this fox is more square in the front, right? And then it goes up and it kind of connects here. And then comes down this way. You can also see that because it's trying to be more human, right? It's actually coming up between the eyes and connecting to the eyebrows. So the eyes are actually in here. Right? So it's like half human. The top part is human, the bottom part is animal. So you could do the same thing with yours, right? This is why we like to study cartoons, is because you can see how other people have done it. If you look at the shape of his head is more round, right? So it's like round at the top and kind of more square or angled at the bottom, almost like a fan shape, right? So you can see the fan shape is also just a variation of that hexagon shape that we studied. But some characters can be rounder and some characters can be a little bit more angled. It really depends on the type of character. But all you need to do is make sure that the relationship is on the face is the same. So how do we apply this? Let me move this over. Yeah, Nick from Zootopia is very, very stylized. And I just wanted to show you the character because it's actually, I can see that you're trying to cartoonify and trying to personify your fox. So I wanted to show you like an exaggeration of that, right? It's definitely, it's a spectrum. Like, how realistic do you want this fox to look? Some other famous foxes that, let me see here. The Fox and the Hound was a good one. Let me see if I can find an image of the Fox and the Hound. That was like a really cute fox from my childhood. Here we go. Right, so foxes tend to have really short snouts, but they're still there. And I think that that's kind of what's missing. And when you draw this line all the way across, it tends to flatten out the face a lot. So what I would do here, again, it's really just kind of like looking at some of the references and using that to sort of inform your drawing and how you can adjust the structure of it, right? So one of the things that you could do very easily is just to interrupt this shape with the snout. So here, even though I don't have a line, I can already start to see the form of it, right? Because you're curving up that white part. And then let's say you did want to stylize your fox. Instead of making the eyes very long, I would probably make the eyes shorter, right? Shorter and wider. So kind of like this. Right? It looks a little scary right now, but like longer. Taller instead of wider. Right? I mean, you can make the eyes whatever style you want, but generally it looks more animal-like and less human-like if the eyes aren't wide, because when they're wide they tend to look a little scary, right? Just like a little creepy because they're kind of human-like, right? And you want to make sure that the eyes align with the nose, right? So the edge of the eye aligns with the tip of the nose. There's also like little things that you might observe on foxes. The ears tend to have tips on them, whether they're black, whether they are white. They tend to be a little bit pointier. So here I can see you're kind of experimenting with some of the fur, the tips of the fur, which is good. So I think you could probably push that a little bit more. And even here, like you've drawn in some of the shapes of the fur. I think you can do that as well with your negative space. So you can just like add in some tufts, right? So that it's a little bit more consistent on either side. So that it maintains the fluffiness of the animal. Okay, last but not least, thank you Dandelion Farms for submitting. Last but not least, I wanted to give my 2 cents on an overall composition. So this one, beautifully, beautifully done. This one is submitted by Zed is Tired. Zed is Tired. You did a write-up for this. Let me see. I'm trying to convey the difference in size between the fox and Caspian, or the boy bandaging the fox's leg. The angle I use so I could show the environment better, but I can feel it can be a bit flat, and I'm not sure if I did the anatomy fully correct since I'm not used to drawing animals. I'm trying to convey the curiosity of the fox receiving help from the boy and the boy caring for the fox. The pose can be more expressive. Okay. So personally, I think that you don't like I don't think you need that I'm missing the anatomy, because your fox is so stylized. It has a very distinctive shape. It's kind of like it's kind of a mangly fox. Like, it's not a perfect, pristine, fluffy, cute fox. It's kind of mangly is the word I can think about. Like, it's a little bit this fox has some grit. So I think the parts that you can improve aren't really necessarily how you drew the fox, but more so it's very orange everywhere. And I think that kind of, I know you're going for a sunset type of look, where it's like super golden everywhere. However, I feel like you're losing some of the impact that you could have if you had more of a distinct silhouette. So just bear with me here. I can also see that you've put in some effects, and it just kind of makes it even more bright and contrasty. However, I wanted to experiment a little bit with the background to see if we can make your composition a little bit better by changing the background color. So I'm just going to invert the selection here and make a copy of this. And I'm just going to lock transparency, because I want to show you what we could do if we change the background color. So lassoing the fox in one go. Thanks. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to shift the hue. This is a really easy way to, even if you're like drawing something traditionally, to experiment with shifting the colors of things. I'm going to reduce the saturation here. This is just a really quick way to see, whoops, I forgot the the inside of the fox. Just a second here. I forgot the negative space. If you're one of my students, you'll probably hear me harping all the time about the importance of negative space. And yet here I forgot to include it. Anyways, I'm doing a really rough, just kind of like a very, very rough lasso of it. Just so I can kind of show you how to change the color. So you can change the hue saturation by kind of doing this, right? I'm going to reduce the saturation a little bit. So let's say I change the background, right? You can kind of see at a glance that immediately the silhouette is more, is like a lot more immediate, like telling the story this way versus like this. It's just a lot easier to see when your piece is very small, right? Like if this was the size that I saw it at, I would have a little bit of trouble figuring out what was happening. Whereas if you just change the background color, immediately you know what's happening much faster. And this is actually called color contrast. It's contrast, but not contrast with values, but contrast with color, right? So I'm not saying you have to keep this color per se. And then you could also, like, if you just selected the background and you wanted to experiment a little bit with it, you could also you could do some selective erasing. So selective erasing can be really effective because, let's say you reduce the opacity, right? You can kind of bring some of your colors back. So I couldn't bring some of those greens in. And I would do the same thing here with the fur. Because like if I wanted to change the background, now suddenly the fur is like super, super fiery, right? So you can do it by like reducing the opacity of the layer a little bit and just kind of like experimenting with what you like. You can also, for example, make the shadows more saturated. Right? You could like also create a color layer where you just change the color of things. So you can make the shadows more intense, for example, right? I can make the shadows more purple or more blue, right? I could even add some purples to the fox and kind of help it stay inside this environment. So in this case, I didn't really think that there was too much that I needed to adjust in terms of the fox itself. The only other thing I would do here is make the pupils a little darker, because pupils are what we like. We look at eyes first because there's a lot of contrast with eyes, and because it's important. Like, eyes are very expressive. Eyes are the window to the soul, right? So if you made the eyes dark, right, I immediately know what the fox is expressing, right? I can start to feel the emotion of the fox. And because the eyes are very human-like, I wouldn't stop with just the eyes. I would also put in eyebrows, because I think that can add to the expression of the fox. So again, let me merge these. So there's the before and after. Just a little better storytelling there, right? A little bit more obvious what's going on. So if you are here, yeah, Darren says, I like how warm the original felt, but this pops out too. So it's really up to you. Like I said, art can be very subjective, right? So that's why I didn't go too in depth on your character designs, because I think those, or your mythical creatures, because, you know, those are obviously very personal. But in terms of composition, right, one of the things that this was missing was a silhouette. So because you already have a really good environment here, I didn't want to, necessarily make the silhouette lighter or darker. So then I just chose a different color, and quite simple to do, actually. And I do this all the time with my traditional paintings. I will put them in and correct them digitally and kind of see what I can do to improve it without investing all of the time and materials into fixing it right away. Well, if you just joined us and you didn't know, our mission at Wing Canvas is to make art education easily accessible to everyone. So join us for free live streamed lessons on YouTube every week, and level up your skills with our community of art nerds, because we're more than just a YouTube channel. We're an online school of illustration and visual storytelling, dedicated to helping artists turn their passion into income. So a huge shout out to our amazing students. You know who you are. You come to our streams and our critiques, and you make our community great. So huge shout out for all of your support. Thanks for supporting our mission, and we love seeing your incredible artwork and watching you grow in our classes and weekly critiques. So if you want to dive deeper, join our Discord to access stream notes and demos. I'll be posting all of these onto the live streams channel, so you can grab them on the Discord. And also, if you join our community on Discord, you'll be able to participate in our art challenges and free workshops and free resources to help you improve. So come connect with fellow art nerds to get inspired. All right, guys. That is it for today. I hope you had fun and learned a lot, and have a terrific rest of your evening. And the next stream, which is happening in September, we are going to be starting our Q&A streams, and we're going to be having one of our alums who went to Wing Canvas and is now working as a background artist in animation. We're going to be interviewing them in September, so keep an eye out for that. All right, guys, thanks for joining. Have a lovely rest of your evening / morning, wherever you are. Bye-bye.